And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. If you guys are new to us here on Amazon, I promise you want to make sure that you're following us because we have some very big things we just confirmed today coming this week. So if you guys will hit that follow button, you see that here in this corner or down below. That way you don't miss out on any of our programs when we go live, or you can always be notified to catch the replay. You will find below the book by our next guest. We're excited to welcome Suzanne to our broadcast today. She's the author of this book you guys see here. You'll see a story of narcissistic abuse, survival, and my journey to understand. We're going to talk to Suzanne not only about the writing of the book, but also what it's been like for her to share her own journey and life lessons with us, and what it's been like for her to see the way that other people are responding to. If you guys are just now finding out about the book, of course, it's here on Amazon. We have it here, the paperback edition you guys can get for $18.95. And you guys have the Kindle edition. I'm going to highlight for you guys over there for $5.99. For those who are simulcasting with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, we have the link for you guys to come over to Amazon. Also, we want to welcome our audience tuning in on X and on Instagram. So you guys already coming in. Hello to you, Mr. Ellaby over on IG. But Suzanne, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, this is something I've been looking forward to. I enjoyed the book, and I think it's one of those books, Suzanne, that so many people will see themselves in, at least bits and pieces of. So I want to begin the conversation there because this is your own personal journey, your own personal story. What has it been like for you to see how so many other people are connecting with you through it?
It's been amazing, actually. One of the reasons, well, there are many reasons I wrote the book, but one of them was that I wanted to start normalizing discussion of narcissistic abuse as a form of a mental disorder, and more importantly, the havoc it wreaks on everyone in the narcissist's wake. The response has been pretty exciting in that, I mean, even when I started writing it and I was in a writer's group and we would read, chapters out loud, and there were a number of people who I did not expect said, "Oh my gosh, you just described a relationship in my life with one of my parents," but they didn't know how to give voice to what was happening to them. And that's part of the insidious nature of narcissistic abuse, is that you are essentially cultivated to believe that everything is your fault and that you were never going to be good enough, and that if you only did certain things, the narcissist wouldn't behave in that certain way. So I've gotten a lot of really emotional emails from people saying this was painful to read because it brought back things that I didn't even know I was experiencing. One of my favorite reviews is from another author. And he basically wrote, "This is the first 5-star rating I've given to a book I didn't enjoy." And the reason was he thought he had worked through some issues that were then brought back to the surface by this book, which he really loved. And he said it really made him feel things, but he wasn't really sure he wanted to feel what the book brought out. So,
yeah. Without even knowing that, because you had not told me that before, and I'm glad you shared it, it goes to something I was saying to you before we went live here, right? Because I thought as I was reading it, I mean, I didn't grow up in this type of an environment, but I thought to myself, first of all, how did she do it and come out the other side? But also, how did she write it? I mean, because it's one thing to come out, but in writing it, Suzanne, as you know from experience, you kind of have to go back to that time. So I'm curious, was that difficult for you to do? Was it difficult for you to relive and replay those moments that may not have been the best for you?
in a word, yes. Again, coming back to, I was in another writing group with a woman that was facilitating our work together from abroad. And she was pretty, she was pretty critical, and basically said, "How on earth can you remember in exquisite detail things that happened to you when you were 4, when you were 5, when you were 7?" And I said, "Be grateful that you don't have a life where that's your truth, because there are moments, conversations, episodes that are so heavily seared on your soul that you'll never forget them." So yes, it was hard for me to write from the standpoint of reliving my truth. And there was some crying involved in the writing. I couldn't start writing this until both of my parents had passed within 2 months of each other. My father in November of 21 and my mom January of 2022. And I started writing this to really try and make sense of the things that I was still processing, unresolved issues with my father. We were never going to get where I thought we were going to go, which was to have a close relationship. And 4 months before he died, I literally had to just put up my boundaries and just say, I can't keep doing this. Um, a part of it is I wanted to make sense of all of these vignettes
Yeah.
that are my life story, and to try and weed them all to understand kind of what I had experienced, the damage that it did to me, and mostly how to not perpetuate that for my daughter, my stepson, and everyone else in my life.
It seemed like, again, as a reader, Suzanne, and reading the book, and especially thinking about the title, You'll See, which we'll dive more into a little bit later. What I thought about when it came to your dad was, and now, and again, I didn't grow up with that type of behavior in my home, but having dealt with people that the book reminded me of, or even thinking about prior guests and they're talking about situations. How much of it, looking back, do you think was projection? Because it seemed like no matter how you seem to excel, you talk about how your mom would react versus your dad. How much of that do you think was projection of himself and his feelings about himself?
I think that had a lot to do with it. I've done a lot of research into narcissism just because, and I've had a whole lot of therapy. She should buy me a wing somewhere, honestly, but or wings, either one. What I've learned about narcissists is, number one, they're always right, and they're typically very deeply insecure themselves, but that manifests as this bravado, this grandiosity, this, I'm the best at everything, I know all the right answers. And literally any achievement that I had professionally or academically, my father would diminish. Like, well, so do you think that makes you successful? Does that make you intelligent? Any number of things. And it was just, it was demoralizing. And yet, because I so craved his attention and his love and his consistency, I kept going back. I kept going back. I kept going back to the empty cup.
Yeah. And we see that in the book, and I'll talk around this. I was referencing it to you earlier. Even when it comes to your relationships, Suzanne, we see it, how he would respond, even talking to individuals who showed an interest in you, talking about you in a way that was less than flattering. And so I'm curious to that point. The reason why I'm bringing that up, Suzanne, is because I have heard in doing these shows over the years that sometimes that almost creates a form of PTSD for some individuals about, okay, what if I end up with someone just like, my father, someone just like my mother, this person? What did you have that fear of your in an effort to be able to find that thing that you weren't getting, that you would end up in a situation with someone who was similar?
Oh, yes. I made a lot of bad relationship choices early in my life, largely because, to put it quite simply, when you grow up with a father like this, add to it military, as an officer in the military, so very command and control, my way or the highway. I was looking for that. Well, I guess I had daddy issues because I was looking
Yeah.
for the same something, unconditional love from others who ended up being exactly like him. And it took me quite a bit of time to realize that that is not what I want in my life. And I'm blessed now that in my second marriage, I have a wonderful relationship, but I can even evaluate former friendships where it just got to a point where I couldn't navigate them anymore. It's because I was realizing I'm being played. This person is a narcissist. I've learned to, when I get really hardcore triggered by somebody and I step back and I look at their words and their behavior, I'm usually dealing with somebody that has narcissistic tendencies, at least, if not full on narcissistic personality disorder.
Right. And I think, again, that's why this book is connecting with so many. Hello to you, Moses Maddox from Columbus, Ohio. He says, yes, it does cause PTSD. Interestingly enough, Moses writes about that in his book, The Book of Moses, Suzanne, as well, about how those type of things can cause that. Dr. Norma, hello to you joining us from North Carolina. Glad to be able to see you. Spinksman, hello to you. Good to be able to see you as well. For those that are just coming in, I see you guys over there on LinkedIn too. Welcome. You're watching Cyrus Webb Presents. We're streaming primarily on Amazon, but we're simulcasting for you all. So if you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, or on Instagram, we do welcome you. We're speaking with Suzanne Groves today about this book, You'll See, a story of narcissistic abuse, survival, and my journey to understand. It's available here on Amazon. You guys can be able to get the paperback. We have it highlighted for you guys there for $18.95. I'm going to go ahead and highlight again the Kindle edition. You guys can go ahead and one click right now for $5.99. If you all have any questions or comments for Suzanne, make sure you put them in the comment section as well. I want to talk about the title of the book. When I first heard about your book, when I first bought it, Suzanne, on Amazon, I wasn't really sure what the title was alluding to or what it meant. Reading it, there's a couple of things came up. I'm curious, though, for you as the writer and the person who had the lived experience, talk to us about the title, You'll See.
So after my parents both passed within 2 months of each other, I was left with the overwhelming task of going through all of their belongings. And in those belongings, I found a metal box of letters, daily correspondence back and forth. My parents wrote back and forth for the year that my father was in Vietnam. And at that point, had already been born. I was 2.5, I suppose. We had moved back to the States from Germany, where I was born. And so my father's letters were predominantly, braggadocious. Here are all the great things I'm doing in Vietnam. And my mother's were more quotidian. Here's what's going on, in the house today. Here's how Suzanne is doing. But in one letter that I found, and I wish that I had seen this when my mom was still alive, she wrote, "So you're curious about Suze? Well, let me tell you, her ability to get her way is downright diabolical. She'll wrap you around her pointy little finger. She's like Quicksilver, Stardust, and the best champagne. You'll see." So on my birthday in 22, it was in August after she had died in January, I pulled that letter. I copied in her handwriting the "You'll see," because to me, it stood for a whole lot more. The best is yet to come. You'll see. Your dad couldn't kill your spirit. You'll see. And I had it tattooed on the inside of my wrist so that on a daily basis, I could look at my mother's handwriting. It chokes me up. And to just see that that's my mom cheering me on. You're going to do great. You'll see.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Suzanne. And that's exactly, by the end of the book, that's what I was thinking that the reader would take away from that regardless of what someone may say, or what someone may try to do to break you, that you'll see is a great way to be able to show them that, you're so much more than that. Kenneth Brown says, excellent topic of conversation. Thank you for joining us over there on Facebook, Kenneth. Good to be able to see you. Let's see, RC Reporter, hello to you. Good to be able to see you as well. Again, if you guys have any questions or comments for Suzanne, make sure you put those down. Speaksman says you have to navigate carefully. And that is the other thing, because it's an interesting thing, Suzanne, because you've kind of put yourself out there in a sense of someone who can show other people what's possible. How does that feel to know that, yes, you've been able to achieve things in your life, but just by your being here and by your sharing this, you're basically cheering for other people to do the same thing?
Absolutely. I firmly believe that there is no testimony without the test. And for 56 years that I was dealing with my father, it was a test constantly. I am an advocate for working on oneself, getting mental health support, because I really did think I can't tell you how many times in different interactions with my father that I honestly thought I was crazy. And that's what narcissists do with the gaslighting, the lying, the manipulation. It's like living in a funhouse 24/7 where you're not really confident in yourself, because how am I not seeing what this person is telling me is reality? So I guess I'm a walking endorsement of, the power of trying to find under all this poop, there's a pile of this pile of poop, there's a pony somewhere. And I guess writing this book helped me find my pony under the big pile of poop. which is that there is a much happier life free of the clutches of narcissism and narcissistic abuse. But it's very critical to be able to set boundaries, to keep them, and to just learn when enough is enough. I mean, you have the right to protect your own space. And it doesn't even matter if it's your mom, your dad. My father, who was not even a religious man, used to always throw out, "Thou shalt respect thy mother and thy father." And it wasn't until toward the end of his life, I was talking to my pastor about it. And she said, "Oh, apparently he doesn't know kind of the rest of that verse, which is fathers do not vex your children."
Mhm. Yeah.
So I got half the story most of the time.
Yeah. Kenneth just bought your book. And thank you for that, Kenneth. Appreciate that. Glad that you are able to get it for yourself. And I think this is the thing too. J-Lo, hey, J-Lo, haven't seen you over on Amazon for a while. Thank you so much for being with us. J-Lo says hello to you as well. Suzanne, Amazon customer, thank you so much for the follows. If you guys are new to us on the Amazon side, make sure you guys do hit that follow button. It's either here in this corner or down below on Amazon. You'll see Suzanne's book there, either on the side or below us as well. Again, the paperback you guys can get here. I'll highlight it again for you guys on Amazon for $18.95. Or you can be able to get the Kindle edition here for $5.99. I bought both. But these are easier for me, ironically, to read the paperback. So I normally buy the hard copy when I can. Suzanne, what is your hope? Whether this was the experience of the reader or not, I'm curious. What do you hope someone reading You'll See takes away from it? I think there's a lot of lessons I took away from it as a reader, but what was your hope as a person writing it? What do you hope to take away from it?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, your story is yours. And whether you want to share it or not, your story, what happened to you, is your story. Own your space, own your voice, number one. Number two, I really wanted to normalize the discussion of narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder as being every bit as devastating and traumatizing, and soul crushing as other forms of abuse. The difference is they're all internal scars and they're all internal hurts that you learn to put on this facade and pretend I'm just fine, everything is fine, I pull myself together, I've got a great career, all these things, when deep inside you were so far from fine. So I think it doesn't even have to be related to narcissistic personality disorder. Anytime you were on the other end of any kind of abuse, you got to own it, you got to speak up and do whatever is needed for your own self-care. We're hearing, we really haven't heard about narcissism in mainstream media until, well, you could do the math, 2016, I think, when, I'm not going to get political, but you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
So we had at the national highest office of the land, somebody who is a walking description of narcissistic personality disorder.
And I think that's why a book like this is so important, Susan, and that's why I appreciate you writing it, even through the challenges of it. I'm curious, though. I feel like I have the answer to this toward the end of the book. But what was it like for you? Because you were there at times when they needed you. I'll put it that way. The reader will be able to tell that when they read the book. What has it been like for you to look in the mirror and to say, regardless of everything, that you're proud of yourself?
Work in progress, I think. I've always been a writer. I mean, I've written professionally since I was 15. So this book was, from the craft of writing, it flowed pretty easily, painful though it was, and I cried through many a chapter. But kind of lost track of your question, Cyrus.
No, it's okay. Yeah, just about being proud of yourself, being able to say you're proud of yourself. Yeah.
I talk a lot with my fellow author friends of why do we write? And if we're in it for the money, forget it. Unless you hit it big, it's a lot of work for, sometimes little rewards, except for me, every time I get either an email or a note from somebody or a review that basically says, this really helped me. I had one review from a therapist who bought this book to really try and understand what it is like for the victim of a narcissist. And she said, it's helping me in my practice. So I believe in being a person of service, being more of a blessing than a burden. And if it only helps a handful of people, that to me will have been a job well done.
Love that. A great conversation with you, Suzanne. A great book. Again, everyone, Suzanne Groves has been our guest. You'll See is the book available here on Amazon. Again, you can get it in paperback or the Kindle edition. Go ahead and one-click it today. For those of you who are joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, the link is there for you guys to come over to Amazon to get it for yourself. For those joining us on X, I will put it in the comment section. For those joining us on Instagram, I will add it to my stories, as well as with a picture of myself with the book. So, Suzanne, really appreciate you stopping by. How can our viewers stay connected with you?
Thank you. You can go to my website, which is SuzanneGroves.com. Pretty easy. I'm on Facebook under Suzanne Groves, author. And I think that's my same handle on Twitter. I don't do a lot on Insta as yet, but yeah.
Awesome.
But I'd love to hear from y'all. And the one thing I can say is that like so many other types of mental health issues and abuse, it's non-denominational. It knows no bounds of race, class, gender, anything. Everybody in one form or another has experienced a narcissist or maybe been a narcissist. And maybe for those people that choose to read it thinking this has nothing to do with me, maybe it'll open some internal dialogue of maybe this isn't how I want to show up in the world anymore.
Love that. Melvina, hello to you over there on IG. Moses Maddox says we have to learn to face our trauma and be able to be vulnerable enough to speak about our traumas. That is so true. And Suzanne, you've definitely done this. Well, congratulations, and looking forward to our next chat together.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And congratulations on all your successes. I want to hear what's going on.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And we thank you, our audience, for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, I'm Cyrus Webb saying thank you so much for being with us. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.